Hello, so this is how to stop bad habits in order to maximize business productivity. And first of all, why should you trust this information? You should trust this information that I'm about to give you with this mind map because I got it from an entrepreneur named Charlie Morgan. Let me just show you who that is real quick. Yeah, this is an entrepreneur that makes, I think, like 10 million a year. He makes a million a month, so you should definitely trust this information because I got most of this from him. And then I also added my own knowledge on dopamine in order to make this comprehensive mind map for you. So you do bad habits and addictions because they give you dopamine. And how do you fix that? You need to reduce your baseline dopamine and you need to replace the bad habits and addictions that you have, right? Now we're going to get to that in a second, but I just want to really quickly introduce myself before that so that the whole video you're not wondering who is this kid wearing a Fjallraven shirt. Why should I take his advice? So hello, my name is Aditya and I learn about kind of the mindset around business and how you can fix your mindset and your brain in order to eradicate your bad habits and addictions and make 10 times faster progress in business and entrepreneurship, no matter what business model that you decide to get into, by teaching mindset, because mindset doesn't get taught enough and it's really important and really useful. So, with that being said, first you need to know why you should really care about getting rid of the bad habits in terms of business, right? You might kind of know why and you might want to kind of get rid of them, but it's really important that you do so. And here's why. So, they give you less time, energy, and focus to put onto your business, right? Because you're going to be spending time, you're going to be spending your energy and kind of your brain points on that, your brain power. And then when you go to do the work after you do whatever bad habits or addictions, you're not going to be able to focus as well as if you didn't have those, right? And this also means less sacrifice for your business, right? You're not able to sacrifice as much because you're holding on to these bad habits and addictions that you need to get rid of. Now, I made a whole video on this because of how important it is, but basically, let me just summarize it for you. Now, the less sacrifice for your business means more competition because more sacrifice equals less competition, right? Now, why would more sacrifice equal less competition? Because less people are willing to sacrifice as much as you, right? So the more that you sacrifice, the less people are sacrificing as much as you. So therefore, the less competition that you have at that level, right? And this obviously leads to less success, right? You're competing with more people. And so now we're going to get to the second part, which is how do you fix that, right? Now, I already mentioned this, but you need to reduce your baseline dopamine and you need to replace your bad habits and addictions, right? So I'll start over here. So why do you need to reduce your baseline dopamine, right? Currently, your baseline dopamine is whack. So here's what I mean by baseline dopamine. Let me just get this drawing tool out really quick. Yeah. So here's like your baseline dopamine, and this is kind of what it looks like, right? It goes up and down and up and down, and your baseline dopamine is basically this black line in the middle, this average, and it goes way up and way down, right? It's very inconsistent. It changes a lot, right? You don't want it to change a lot. You want it to be consistent. Well, why is your baseline dopamine whack? It's because of things like short form content, right? It gives you a bunch of dopamine. It reduces your attention span, things like that. Obviously, short form content is horrible, right? And entertainment, Mr. Beast style, super highly edited content. These are all like increasing the dopamine in your brain. And also, pretty much everyone nowadays doesn't just sit and do nothing, right? They can't spend a single second where they're not doing something. They always need some sort of entertainment, some sort of content, some sort of feed, and they can't just sit around and think and not do something. And you probably also listen to stimulating music all the time, right? So if you're in a car, you probably listen to music. You can't just sit with your thoughts, and stimulating music fills up a lot of your time. Now, all four of these things, among many other things, make your baseline currently move up a lot and move down a lot, right? So once again, we get to the question of why is your baseline dopamine moving up and down? Why is that a bad thing and why is that not a good thing, right? So the reason for that is because, let me just redraw the diagram. So you have your average dopamine there, and then you have this red, and your dopamine right now is probably something like that, right? It goes up and down a lot, right? Now, when you have a stimulating activity, which I'm just going to do in this violet color, it's going to look something like that, right? It's going to be more stimulating than your average dopamine, cycle like that. So, as you can see, the difference between the peak of this red, your, you know, average dopamine going up and down and up and down, it's not going to be a huge difference between the top of this one and the top of this purple one. Now, you actually do want a big difference between the peaks of these two, and I'll show you right now why in a second. So, let's erase this red one, and let's say that you only have a little bit of dopamine, like your average dopamine. So you don't do these activities above, and you've reduced them a bunch, so now your dopamine looks like this, right? Now, you see the peak of this one is so low and the peak of this one is so high. So this difference right here, that's a huge difference. This is going to be so much more stimulating, right? Now, if you keep doing these things and your dopamine keeps going up and down and up and down a bunch, then you're going to have to start increasing this thing more and more and more. And you're going to have to, and you're going to start getting worse and worse into the addiction and the bad habit. And that's how addictions get worse and worse and worse. So you want to keep your dopamine, your baseline dopamine low, and you want to keep it consistent, right? And so the next question that you would naturally ask is, well, how do I have a more consistent dopamine baseline, right? So obviously, just reduce these things a lot more. Now, the main thing here is that you're going to want to slowly cut out the above activities that I mentioned. And you're not going to want to just go cold turkey because we'll get to why in a second, but it's going to be a huge difference for your brain. And you want to kind of gradually lower it down so that your brain doesn't even realize it. And it's not too much of a change. And this is why dopamine detoxes exist. Now, you can do a dopamine detox if you want. It might not work for you because you're going from 100 all the way down to 0. So I recommend a gradual change instead. But if you think you can do a dopamine detox, go ahead and try it. Now, I'd like to give kind of an example here. So pretty much every time I see an old person, waiting in line or sitting or something, they're not doing like stuff that's super dopaminergic, right? Usually they're not on their phone like on YouTube Shorts or whatever. They're not doing such dopaminergic things. And try to think about how old people would react to like modern video games. So like Call of Duty, Osu. If you don't know what Osu is, it's kind of like a rhythm game. You might have seen it before. You might not know it by name. Yeah, you basically have to like hit all of these boxes like in a rhythm. Oh, and yeah. So these modern, very dopaminergic games, you could only assume how old people would react to them, right? They would be like super surprised. It would be like way too much dopamine for them. Their eyes would be wide like that. And the reason for that is that their dopamine doesn't go up and down and change so much, right? It stays like that. So when you introduce this huge activity like that, this huge stimulating video game, it's a huge difference for them. Look at the difference right there. That's so much. And hence that's very stimulating for them. And the second part of how you fix your bad habits and addictions, going all the way back up, here, is that you want to replace them, right? Now, let's say that you do a bad habit or an addiction routinely, right? You come home after work or school or whatever, and you play video games for 1 or 2 hours. Let's just use that as an example, right? Now, if you wanted to stop that, you wouldn't just look at the time and be like, okay, we're 15 minutes in. Let's just wait for another 45 minutes before I can do whatever. You wouldn't just sit around and wait for when you would usually do your bad habit to be over. So you need to replace it with something else to fill up that gap of time. And another reason why you need to replace it with something else is because you remember how that activity is super stimulating and super dopaminergic, and it gives that huge curve and that huge difference between your baseline dopamine and that stimulating activity. What replacing it is going to do with like a semi-stimulating activity. So let me just draw a diagram for you really quick. Let's say this is your baseline, and this is a usual activity, right? Huge dopamine spike. But if you replace it with something healthy, like let's use dark green. Now, if you replace it with something healthy, it's not going to be that much, right? So it's going to be kind of like a middleman between a huge stimulating activity and being completely no stimulating activities at all, right? So it's going to kind of fill that gap, and it's going to make it easier for you to transition from super stimulating activities all the way down to, you keep a pretty consistent low dopamine baseline. Low dopamine baseline. You get what I mean? So you want to replace your bad habits and addictions with something healthy that gives some dopamine, but it doesn't give a whole lot of dopamine, right? So this can be things like work, socializing, reading and documentaries, exercise, and cold exposure. So I got these directly from Charlie Morgan. If work gives you like a little bit of dopamine, which it probably does, working on whatever business that you have, if that gives you enough dopamine for you to not indulge in the bad habit or addiction, go for it. Socializing or talking to somebody else, obviously that's healthy and that does give a bit of dopamine. You can read a book or you can watch a documentary. That works too. And obviously you're just going to want to experiment with these and see what works for you. Obviously, all 5 of these might not perfectly work for you, and some of them are probably going to work better than others. So yeah, just test it and see how it works for you. And also exercise. So exercise gives you some pretty good dopamine, like going to the gym. And cold exposure. So cold exposure gives you a lot of healthy dopamine, right? So like taking a cold shower, ice bath, whatever. So yeah, you're just going to want to get rid of bad habits and addictions through these two methods. And that's almost guaranteed to get rid of your bad habits and addictions. And that's about all I had to teach you for this video. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. I do have one-to-one mindset coaching down in the description if you're interested in that. And that's definitely a great investment if you want to eradicate your bad habits and addictions in order to get 10 times faster progress in whatever business model that you choose to do. It doesn't matter, dropshipping, agency, YouTube channel, whatever it is. That's definitely going to help. And yeah, that's basically all I had to say. Bye.